ترتب قدامي مائدة تجاه مضايقية.
What's going on? This is an impromptu video, so it's a little different. But I wanted to share this with you because I think this is really interesting and you'll find it really interesting. So I'm reading a text. This is the Canon of Scripture by the Protestant evangelical scholar F.F. Bruce. And he makes a startling admission here in chapter 13 when he's talking about Irenaeus, Apollos, and Novation. He actually concedes and admits that apostolic succession, the apostolic tradition of passing down the episcopate, he says that is the indications of a true church, and that this is how you weed out heretical false teachings is through apostolic succession. So peep this, on page 170 in F.F. Bruce's book, he writes here, the Gnostic schools maintain that it was they who best preserved the original teachings of the apostles. And for those of you guys who don't know who the Gnostics were, they were a group of people that believed that through gnosis, which is just the attaining of knowledge, that you could reach some type of, nirvana or some type of sanctified state. And they believed that there were certain apostles that were given this, others weren't, because of their quote unquote status of being able to receive it. So he says here, some of them claim that the apostles' more esoteric teachings, strange teachings, had been delivered privately to selected disciples who were worthy or gifted enough to receive it. Irenaeus set himself to examine such claims and to establish the content of the genuine apostolic tradition. Now, notice what he says here. The tradition was maintained in living power, he argued, in those churches which were founded by apostles, in which there had been a regular succession of bishops or elders since their foundation. It was summed up in those churches' rule of faith or baptismal creed. Now, this is a startling admission. He's saying that these people, even though they may have had, quote unquote, the laying on of hands, just because they had the laying on of hands, but did not keep the correct teachings that went with the laying on of hands, that immediately disqualified them as a actual church. And notice what he does here. He says it was summed up in those churches' rule of faith or baptismal creed. We understand that when we get to the first creed, the first admission of what it means to be a Christian in the Nicene Creed, the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed, it actually says at the end of the creed that we believe that baptism is done for the remission of sins. No Protestant believes that today, and no Protestant believes in apostolic succession, because if they do, then there's not really any Protestant churches that would be able to prove that, aside from the Orthodox and or Catholic churches. So if we keep reading here, he says the doctrine maintained in such a church in Irenaeus' day might be assumed to be that which was first taught by the apostolic founder or founders and transmitted through an unbroken succession of bishops. The burden of proof lay on those who argued that the doctrine had been changed in the course of transmission between the date of foundation and the time at which Irenaeus wrote. Moreover, the faith confessed in the churches founded by apostles was confessed in other churches of later foundation throughout the world. The churches planted in Germany have not believed or handed down anything different, yet nor the churches among the Iberians or the Celts, nor those of the East, nor those in Egypt and Libya, nor those established in the center of the world. If we keep reading here, with the churches which they founded, they deposited everything that pertains to saving truth. And from these churches, it must be learned the more securely because of the complete and continuous succession of bishops in the churches. This is startling. He assumed that all the apostles were unanimous in their teaching. It is plain, however, from the New Testament that while, say, Paul, Peter, and James were agreed on the basic facts of the gospel, and he gives a quote here in First Corinthians or Colossians, some of these, there were differences among them on the practical implications of those facts. So he's basically saying that the teaching was unanimous amongst all the churches at the time. However, in the mechanism in which you the mechanism in which you do certain things, he said there was initially and he's talking about when Peter first went up to, when Paul first went up to Peter and confronted him about certain things. But then obviously when we get to Acts, we have the council in Acts 15, where the church definitively grounds what it means to be a Christian and how the faith goes forward. And they all agree together. And it said it seemed good to us and to the Holy Spirit. If you want to get a greater in-depth teaching on that, you can go look at my previous video that I did where it says Sola Scriptura. I think I titled it Sola Scriptura is not biblical or something like that. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. I don't want this video to be super long, but I do need to explain all of this. So that's what he means there. But if you keep reading, notice what he says here. But whatever differences they were resolved in a 2nd century synthesis into Irenaeus. This synthesis was the Apostolic Tradition. Whoa. It was the Apostolic Tradition? That synthesis was the Apostolic Tradition? And this book is amazing. Now, obviously, with him being a Protestant scholar, he's going to disagree with us on a couple of other things. But he's not disagreeing with us on this. And the reason he's not is because this is just history, right? This should not even be disputed, right? If he's going to be true to him as a scholar, he has to report this stuff accurately. Now, what I want to do next is I want to bring up some verses, because I don't want anybody to think that that I'm just making this up. Sorry, let me give me a second here, guys. I'm going to bring this over, because I wanted to bring up some verses so people wouldn't think that this is just something that we just made up or something like that. No, this is what the Bible teaches. And I'm going to show you some verses from the Old Testament going into the New that explain the idea of apostolic succession, the laying on of hands, and the deposit of the faith from one generation to the next through succession. So in Numbers 27, 18 through 23, we get this passage. And notice the language. And the Lord said unto Moses, take thee Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thy hand upon him, and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and give him a charge in their sight. And thou shalt put some of thine honor upon him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. What do you think this is? And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall ask counsel for him after the judgment of Urim before the Lord. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all of the children of Israel with him, even all the congregation. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and he took Joshua, set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation. And notice what he did here. And he laid his hands upon him and gave him a charge as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. So this is Old Testament. So you can't say that the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church, for that matter, just made this up. This is Bible, right? Let's look at some more. If we go to Isaiah chapter 22, we get something similar. The idea of the passing on of that office, right? And it shall come to pass in that day that I will call my servant Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with thy robe and strengthen him with thy girdle. And I will commit thy government into his hand. And he shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. And look what it says. And the key of the house of David will I lay upon his shoulder. So he shall open and none shall shut. And he shall shut and none shall open. Let's keep reading now. a lot of people immediately just go to Acts chapter 1, verse 20. And they look at this and they say, you know, oh, look, this is apostolic succession. The idea of the office, right? The passing on that office to from Judas. It was taken from Judas because of what he did and given to another. But a lot of people don't realize that this actually is a prophecy from the Old Testament. So I'm showing you verses from the Old Testament that it is the laying on of hands, which is done through the person that comes before in the midst of the congregation. The priest is, it's not something that's just made up. If you actually read Psalm 109, verse 8, it says, let his days be few and let another take his office, right? This is a very popular prophecy. You get the fulfillment of it in Acts chapter 1, verse 20, for it is written in the book of Psalms, right? Let his habitation be desolate and let no man dwell therein. So you can't just put anybody there. They have to be appointed. It's not just some guy can say, oh, well, I believe God is telling me to start a church. No. You have to be selected. You have to be appointed by God, first and foremost. So they got that part right. But you have to receive the succession through the laying on of hands, through the church. You have to receive succession from the lineage of the apostles all the way down to, you can't just start a church. And the reason for this is the same reason as we went through in the beginning with the Gnostics. The Gnostics did that. And they said, well, you know, we're the true church. You know, I used to be a bishop, but for one, your teaching is incompatible with all of the other churches in the area, for one. And then two, some of the Gnostics didn't receive the laying on of hands. So it's the laying on of hands and the correct deposit of faith that all of the churches have. You can't just say whatever you want and do it. This is how you avoid this particular issue, right? This is how you avoid heresy. And this is how you avoid all of the issues with the 40,000 different denominations we have. This is how we ensure correct teaching. That faith that has been once and for all deposited. And I'll find that verse. I believe it's in Jude. I'll look at that after this. But so if we go in the Greek, actually, this is Acts chapter 1, verse 20. Episkopal, episkoten aftu, right? So notice is using this word episcopate here. In his position, let another take. If we go to the Greek, this is 1984, Episkopē, right? Oversight, visitation, office of a bishop. That's something that you have to be appointed by God to do. That is passed down. Now what's interesting is if you go to the Greek for Psalm 109, for the same, for that verse that we looked at, verse 8, where is it? Become the days of few, oversaying. Okay, yeah, here it is. K10, episkoten of two. The same thing right here. Sorry, guys, my Greek is not as good as my Arabic, but I'm trying. K10, episkopoten of two. So it's the same word right here. Episcopate. And this is in the Septuagint reading of the Psalms. So this is not like we're just making this up, guys. Let me find that verse. I think it's in Jude. Once. Yeah, here it is. Jude chapter 1. So Jude, the servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to them that are sanctified by God the Father and preserved in Jesus Christ and called. Mercy unto you and peace and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was delivered a little bit unto the saints. No, contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. It was already delivered. We don't have to, every generation, continue to reinvent the wheel. Oh, is the Trinity true? Is icon veneration true? Is baptismal regeneration true? Is there the real presence in the youth? No, we don't have to keep doing that every generation. Through apostolic succession, the teaching has been preserved. It was already delivered to the apostles, and the apostles delivered that teaching along with the tradition through the rest of the apostles. Through the disciples of the apostles, and through the disciples of the disciples of the apostles, and through the disciples of the disciples of the disciples of the apostles, all the way down to today, through the laying on of hands. So when a person is ordained, they are receiving that apostolic succession, which is biblical, and which, even as I just showed you, Protestant scholars agree with, that is how the church operated in the first century. And even right here in Jude, it says that Christ delivered that once. Contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. So I thought I'd just make this video real quick. I know it's a little impromptu. I don't have, like, the glamorous cameras and all of that stuff. I'm in a hoodie or whatever, but I thought this was really important to kind of get out there and to show people that this is great stuff. So I might make a more in-depth video. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit that like button to get this out. And I'll probably be going deeper a little bit into that book. And there's a couple other books that I'm reading, ironically from Protestant scholars that share this same sentiment. So make sure that you stick around, and I will see you guys later.
ترتب قدامي مائدة تجاه